No one has heard from Alexis Crawford for nearly a week.
Baby, I love you, baby. Just come home. Come home, baby. You know, come home. I love you. Just come home. I'm not gonna leave until you get home.
The missing Clark Atlanta student has been found dead in DeKalb County. Our sources are telling us that her body was found at Exchange Park in Decatur. That is near I-285 and Columbia Drive.
No bond for a young woman accused of killing her friend who was also her roommate.
Around 3 o'clock in the morning, on October 31st, 2019, an argument started inside an apartment near the campus of Clark Atlanta University. Two 21-year-old students, who had once called each other best friends, suddenly ended up in a physical fight right there in the living room. What started as shouting quickly turned into something much more serious. Another student who was inside the apartment heard the noise. He stepped out of his room to see what was going on and tried to break it up. But within seconds, the situation spiraled out of control. Investigators would later determine that one of them began choking Alexis Crawford. At the same time, another person pulled a plastic bag over her head and cut off her air. Alexis was just 21 years old. She was only a few months away from graduating with a degree in criminal justice. In those final moments, she tried to fight back. She struggled, desperately trying to breathe. According to the suspect's statements, the last seconds were chaotic. There was a struggle, and they said you could hear sounds of agony in the room. Then, after a while, the apartment went quiet. Security cameras in the parking lot later captured something important. Around 3 in the morning, a car pulled up to the entrance of the building. Investigators believe that was the moment Alexis's body was carried out of the apartment. They placed her inside a large plastic container. After that, the car drove about 11 miles away from the campus, heading to Exchange Park in DeKalb County. And then, the next day, something even more disturbing happened. One of the same people involved started sending messages from Alexis's phone, pretending to be worried about her disappearance. When investigators finally learned who was responsible, they honestly could not believe it was her. All right, guys, hey, let me pause for just a second. I want to ask you something really quick. I'm honestly curious where my audience is watching from. So, if you don't mind, drop a comment and tell me what city you're in and what time it is for you right now. It's always really interesting to see where everyone's watching from. Thanks for taking a moment to do that. Go ahead and write it in the comments. And all right, let's keep going. Today we're in Atlanta, and we're going back to October 2019. 21-year-old Alexis Crawford was a senior at Clark Atlanta University, and she was getting ready for graduation and all the celebrations that come with it. Her family and her faith meant everything to her. She came from a big, loving family. She had 5 brothers and 4 sisters, and she was really close with her parents, too. Her friends said Alexis always had this strong confidence in her own abilities. She worked hard for every single achievement she earned. People described her as thoughtful, kind, and fun to be around. And, she had a really strong sense of right and wrong. That probably came from growing up with her father, Bobby Crawford, who worked in law enforcement. And, as the saying goes, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Alexis was studying criminal justice because she wanted a career where she could help people and actually make a positive difference in the world. At the time, Alexis was living off campus with another 21-year-old student named Jordan Jones. They shared an apartment not far from the university. People who knew them said the two were often described as
like 2 peas in a pod.
And Alexis even called her her best friend. Jordan knew Alexis's family really well too. She had spent holidays with them, including Thanksgiving and Easter. So she wasn't just a roommate, she was someone the family welcomed into their home. And honestly, when you think about it, a lot of students end up living with someone they barely know. So in a way, it seemed like both of them were really lucky to have each other as roommates. Later that day, Alexis's mom, Tammy Crawford, and her sister, Monica Crawford, called her on FaceTime. Alexis seemed to be in a really good mood. They were laughing, joking around, and she was talking a lot, just enjoying the conversation. At one point, Alexis asked Monica if she could send her a little money through Cash App. Their father, Bobby Crawford, said it was totally fine, so Monica went ahead and sent it. Later that same evening, a little before 9 o'clock, Alexis's sister, Alexandria Crawford, texted her to ask what her plans were. It was homecoming weekend at the university, and over the next few days, the campus was supposed to be full of celebrations and parties. But it sounded like Alexis didn't really have anything planned. She just replied, "Nothing." At 9:03 that night, Alexis posted something on Instagram. About 20 minutes later, she replied to one message there. And after that, no one heard from her again. When morning came and the sun was up, Alexis was still silent. She normally talked with someone from her family every single day, sometimes almost every hour. But now her phone was going straight to voicemail. On November 1st, Alexis didn't show up for class. Later that day, she also missed her work shift. That was completely unlike her. Her family immediately started to worry. Alexis was the kind of person who never skipped anything, especially without an explanation. Something was clearly wrong, and soon she was officially reported missing.
Missing Clark Atlanta student Naima Abdullahi joining us now from the Atlanta University Center. Naima, what do we know here?
Sheba, family and friends of 21-year-old Alexis Crawford desperately need your help to find her, that they're concerned for her safety and they're hoping to find her safely. We first found out about this yesterday, and here's what we know so far. Atlanta police confirmed a missing person report has been filed for the Clark Atlanta University senior. Her brother says that she was last seen on Wednesday, October 30th. Alexis Crawford is originally from Athens and lives off campus while attending Clark Atlanta University this semester. We're told school officials have been notified about her disappearance now. Police right now are also aware of what's going on. The university is aware, and now the family is asking for the public's help to find her. So if anyone saw her, know anything, or saw anything, to contact police immediately.
Security camera footage later confirmed that Alexis left the Heritage Station Apartments complex. Her roommate, Jordan Jones, told investigators that around 11:30 that night, she drove Alexis to a nearby liquor store not far from their apartment. According to Jordan, about an hour later, she saw Alexis again briefly before going to bed. Jordan told police that when she woke up on Thursday, October 31st, Alexis wasn't there. Recently, Alexis had been sleeping in the living room, but that morning there were no signs she had spent the night there. Jordan looked around the apartment and noticed something else. Alexis's phone, her ID, and her debit card were also missing. When Jordan was about to leave for class, she realized the apartment door was locked. At first, it seemed possible that Alexis had gone out late that night, maybe to a party or to meet some friends. But the only CCTV footage investigators were able to find showed her at the liquor store. And none of her friends reported seeing her anywhere that night.
In the last hour, Atlanta police have released new images of a missing Clark Atlanta student. These photos taken inside of a liquor store just hours before Alexis Crawford disappeared. Police think she may have been wearing the same outfit.
Soon, the hashtag number Let's Find Lex started spreading rapidly across social media. Volunteers joined the search, heading out to look for Alexis. A lot of attention was focused on an overgrown area across the street from her apartment complex. Alexis had never disappeared like this before. There was no activity on her phone, and nothing had moved on her bank accounts either. And honestly, when you look at everything people knew about her, how responsible she was, how attentive she was, especially when it came to staying in touch with her family, the hope that she would suddenly show up safe slowly started turning into fear of the worst possible outcome. Still, police said they couldn't rule anything out at that point. There was technically still a possibility that Alexis might have left on her own.
No one has heard from Alexis Crawford for nearly a week.
Alexis Crawford's parents were here along with her siblings, her cousins, other family members and friends, praying for her safe return. They were holding hands in prayer, and they were also joined by the Clark Atlanta University president, who says that the campus community is completely devastated after Crawford's disappearance.
Earlier today, with the Clark Atlanta Police Department's Chief of Police, Chief Deborah Williams, and she assured this family that the Clark Atlanta Police Department would do everything it could to bring this young lady home to her family. And we just finished a meeting with the senior leadership here in the Atlanta Police Department, who also assured this family that as the lead investigative agency, they would do all that they could. And the family and I have great confidence in the men and women that are looking for Miss Crawford. And we have every reason to believe that Atlanta police will get to the bottom of what happened to her. But today I stand with this family asking for several things of the people of Atlanta. First, I would ask the people of Atlanta to pray for the family and for Ms. Crawford. Secondly, and more importantly, there are people in this community, students in the AU Center and other places, that may have information that can be helpful in finding out just where Ms. Crawford is. And I would ask the people of Atlanta to come forward with any information that you might have to help the Atlanta Police Department to do their very best in finding Ms. Crawford and bringing her home. First person that I would ask to speak is Mr. Bobby Wright, who is Ms. Crawford's father, who drove up from Athens and has made the determination he's not leaving the city until his baby is found.
Baby, I love you, baby. Just come home. Come home, baby. Come home. I love you. Just come home. I'm not gonna leave until you get home.
And I hope God's walking with you, and please prevent any evil that comes our way. And we're here for you. I love you, Lexi. I miss you.
As you can see, the emotions are running very deep. This is a praying, believing family, and they do believe in their holding faith that Alexis will come home.
Police officers started calling local hospitals and medical facilities, checking to see if anyone had been admitted under the name Jane Doe. They were hoping maybe Alexis had ended up somewhere unidentified, like after an accident or something. But then suddenly, investigators received information that brought their search right back to the place where Alexis had last been seen, her apartment. The family's pastor and spokesperson, Mark Al Hutchin, later said,
"We know she's been going through a really difficult time. Recently, something happened to her that no woman should ever have to experience. So we're asking the people of Atlanta to keep Alexis and her family in their prayers."
At that moment, no one explained what exactly that meant. But later it became known that on October 27th, just 3 days before she disappeared, Alexis had gone to the hospital and filed a police report. She said she believed she had been sexually assaulted. According to Alexis, the person responsible was 21-year-old Baron Brantley, the boyfriend of her roommate Jordan Jones. On October 27th, the three of them had been in the girl's apartment together, drinking that evening. At some point, Baron began trying to kiss Alexis and touch her, but she pushed him away and rejected his advances. Later, he claimed he supposedly thought it was Jordan. Alexis, really scared, went into her bedroom. Baron followed her. After that, she went into the bathroom, locked herself inside, and shut the door. According to her statement, after that moment, she couldn't remember anything. She said she lost consciousness. When she woke up, she noticed that her underwear had been torn and Baron was partially dressed. At the same time, Jordan was knocking on the door. When Baron opened it, Jordan described him as being half-dressed. And the first thing he said was,
"I didn't rape Alexis."
By around 6 o'clock that morning, Baron had already driven away in Jordan's car. This happened just shortly before police arrived at the apartment. What's interesting is that it was actually Jordan who called 911. But she didn't call to report the assault. Instead, she told dispatch that Baron had taken her car and left. During that call, not a single word was said about the alleged sexual assault. And there was something else that stood out. During the call, Jordan referred to Baron as her ex-boyfriend. That didn't really match what others had been saying because according to several people, the two of them were still together at that time.
Hey, what's the address of the emergency? You need police, fire, EMS.
Yes, because my ex-boyfriend just stole my car. He took my keys and went.
Okay. What's your name?
Jordan Jones.
All right, Miss Jones.
Jordyn.
We'll get an office out for you.
After that, Alexis went to Grady Memorial Hospital, where doctors performed a sexual assault examination, what's commonly called a rape kit. The results directly connected Baron Brantley to the incident. Investigators found traces of his semen in her body, While Alexis was going through all of this, something disturbing was happening back at the apartment. Jordan Jones knew what had happened, but she secretly allowed Barron to come back and stay in her room. And he remained there for the next several days. Alexis later told friends that she no longer felt comfortable sleeping in her own bedroom. Because of that, she moved to the living room. She felt scared, she felt unsafe, and everything now depended on the police investigation that had begun after she reported the assault. While Alexis was sleeping in the living room and trying to stay away from her room inside the apartment, she had absolutely no idea that Barron was still there in the same place. Police soon returned to the apartment to speak with both Jordan and Barron. Jordan told investigators that yes, Alexis had reported the incident and that after that, the two of them were no longer speaking to each other. The longer detectives talked with them, the more they began to realize there were a lot more details to this story. And the more questions they asked, the worse the situation started to look. Eventually, Jordan, with the help of her father, who worked in law enforcement in another state, led detectives to a location about 11 miles away from the apartment.
We are continuing to cover this breaking news just into CBS 46. We can confirm the missing Clark Atlanta student has been found dead in DeKalb County. Our sources are telling us that her body was found at Exchange Park in Decatur. That is near I-285 and Columbia Drive.
Today, Alexis's body was found in a park. Our investigators are working on securing arrest warrants for 2 individuals. The case has come to one of the saddest conclusions possible and has been absolutely heartbreaking.
On November 8th, about a week after she had been reported missing, Alexis's body was discovered in a park in DeKalb County. The location where she was found was roughly 11 miles from her apartment. It was a quiet wooded area where things are usually peaceful. That's where the search eventually led investigators to a horrifying discovery. After several days of uncertainty and hope for a miracle, the truth became clear. Alexis was gone. Investigators later determined that she had been strangled. After her death, her body was placed inside a plastic container. That's how it was left, in a remote part of the park, hidden away in an attempt to cover up what had happened. The discovery was devastating for her family, her friends, and the entire university community that had been hoping for a different outcome. Not long after that, police made an official announcement. Authorities confirmed that 2 people had been charged with murder. Those 2 people were Jordan Jones and Barron Brantley. The news spread quickly among students and caused a huge reaction on campus. For many people, it was another shock, because this wasn't just about unknown suspects. These were people others actually knew, people students had studied with, talked to, and spent time around. Later, the president of the student government, Levon Campbell, said the impact of this tragedy on the campus was enormous. According to him, the university community had to process several painful realizations all at once. First, there was the loss of Alexis, a young student who had been part of campus life and had her whole future ahead of her. And second, there was the shock of understanding that this tragedy had been carried out by 2 other students. People many had known personally. People who had once been seen as friends, classmates, and part of the same community. And that realization made the tragedy even heavier for everyone connected to the university.
The atmosphere on campus is really heavy right now. A lot of students are trying to process what happened and make sense of it all, looking for answers to questions that, right now, no one really has.
The president of Clark Atlanta University later published an open letter expressing deep sorrow on behalf of the entire institution. In that message, he emphasized that the events surrounding Alexis Crawford had been a devastating blow to the whole university community. Many students, professors, and staff members were shocked and heartbroken as the news quickly spread across campus. The letter also explained that the university administration was doing everything possible to support students during this incredibly difficult time. Officials announced that counseling services would be available on campus. Professional counselors would be there to help anyone affected by the tragedy. Students could come and speak with them at any time to talk about their emotions, their fears, and the pain that followed the news. The administration stressed that the university community needed to support one another because for many people this loss felt deeply personal. After all, Alexis was not just another student. She was part of the campus, part of everyday university life, someone her classmates, professors, and friends knew personally. Her absence was felt everywhere. Meanwhile, for her family, the tragedy carried a completely different and far deeper weight. For them, this wasn't just news that shook a university. It was the loss of a daughter, a sister, someone they loved, someone without whom their lives would never be the same again. And when her father spoke about Alexis, you could hear a kind of pain in his voice that honestly no parent should ever have to carry. And her father said,
"If someone had to take a life, they could have taken mine. They didn't have to take my child."
Unexpectedly, Barron Brantley and Jordan Jones began talking with investigators. Little by little, they started admitting what had happened to Alexis Crawford. At first, their answers were cautious and incomplete. But with every new conversation, more details about that night began to come out. Detectives listened closely, trying to piece together the full picture of the events that led to the tragedy. According to their statements, shortly before 3 a.m. on October 31st, an argument broke out between the two girls. At first, it was just verbal raised voices, sharp words. But the tension escalated quickly, and the argument suddenly turned into a physical fight. The apartment became loud. Voices were getting higher, movements more aggressive, and the situation was spiraling out of control. When Barron heard the noise, he came out of Jordan's room. He later said he saw the two girls fighting and decided to step in, but at that moment, the situation became even more dangerous. Everything happened very fast. Barron admitted that he started choking Alexis. At the same moment, Jordan grabbed a plastic bag, pulled it over Alexis's head, and cut off her air. It all happened within minutes. Barron told detectives that Alexis was fighting to breathe. He said you could hear sounds of agony-heavy, broken breathing that slowly began to fade. For investigators, that description became one of the most disturbing accounts of what happened inside the apartment that night. Meanwhile, surveillance footage helped reconstruct what happened next. A security camera in the parking lot outside the apartment complex captured Jordan and Barron arriving in Jordan's car around 3 a.m. The footage shows the car pulling up near one of the building entrances, the same entrance investigators later focused on. Police believe that was the moment Alexis's body was loaded into the vehicle. According to investigators, they placed her body inside a plastic storage container from the apartment. Before leaving, they tried to clean up the scene. In the living room, they wiped away blood, attempting to remove signs of the struggle and hide what had happened. After that, they carried the container outside and loaded it into the car. Then, they drove away from the apartment complex and headed toward Exchange Park in DeKalb County. Investigators say it was there, in a wooded area of the park, that they left Alexis's body. The location was quiet and remote, a place where they likely believed the crime would remain hidden. After that, both of them returned to the apartment. According to their statements, they went to sleep, as if the night that had just ended in tragedy was simply another ordinary night coming to a close. Later that same day, Jordan sent a message to another friend. In the message, she asked if the friend could help her replace a plastic storage container. That request immediately raised suspicion among investigators, because according to the investigation, that exact kind of container had been used to transport Alexis's body. After that, Jordan and Barron got ready and went to a Halloween party. For many people, that detail was especially shocking. While Alexis's family had already begun to worry about her disappearance, the two of them were out at a holiday party. After reviewing all the evidence, detectives concluded that Jordan and Barron had acted as equal and voluntary participants in the crime. Investigators believe their actions showed joint involvement both in the attack itself and in the attempt to cover it up. Jordan turned off Alexis's phone, but after that, she continued sending messages to it, pretending to be worried about her friend. According to investigators, those actions created the illusion that she knew nothing about Alexis's disappearance. She even made a post on Instagram. In the post, Jordan wrote that Alexis was missing and asked people to help find her. The message looked like it came from someone genuinely worried about her friend. Part of that post read, "It's obviously a really difficult time for me and I feel completely helpless. My heart is honestly hurting right now." However, investigators said they saw no real signs of remorse or sympathy for what had happened to Alexis Crawford. According to detectives, during the conversations and interrogations, there was no genuine emotional reaction to the tragedy. No words of sympathy, no visible regret, no sense that they truly understood the scale of what had happened. To the investigators, it came across as cold and distant. Both of them behaved as if nothing had happened. Their attitude created the impression that the tragedy, which had devastated a family and shaken an entire community, simply didn't trigger any internal reaction in them. For the detectives working the case, that became another disturbing piece of the overall picture. Meanwhile, police continued carefully examining the apartment where the key events were believed to have taken place. Investigators used a special chemical called luminol. This substance can reveal traces of blood even after someone has tried to wash them away. When detectives treated the room with the reagent, they discovered blood traces in at least 6 different places in the living room. Those traces appeared despite clear attempts to clean the area. Surfaces that looked completely clean at first suddenly began glowing with that characteristic bluish light, a sign that blood had once been there, suggesting a struggle may have taken place in the room. Still, many questions remained. Whose blood it was and exactly how it got there wasn't immediately clear. The traces pointed toward violence, but by themselves they didn't fully explain what had happened inside the apartment that night. The motive behind the crime also remained uncertain. Despite the evidence, the examinations, and the long interrogations, the exact circumstances of the fight were still unclear. Many details from that night remained scattered fragments that didn't quite form a complete picture. But one fact drew particular attention from investigators. It was known that Alexis had filed a police report on October 27th, just 3 days before her disappearance. Because of that, investigators considered the possibility that this event might have triggered the conflict. The tension surrounding that report may have led to an argument that eventually escalated into violence. Still, police emphasized that this was only one possible theory. Investigators said it remained unclear whether the report itself became the direct motive for the murder or if the tragedy resulted from a fight that suddenly spiraled out of control and ended in a fatal outcome. While investigators continued searching for answers, Alexis's family was preparing for the most painful goodbye imaginable. Her funeral took place on November 16th. The ceremony was filled with grief and heartbreak. A huge number of people attended: relatives, friends, classmates, and others who had known Alexis or had been deeply moved by her story. Even more people watched the service online, because the funeral was also streamed over the internet. For many, it was a chance to pay their final respects to a young woman whose life had been taken far too soon. Soon after that, the case moved forward legally. Jordan Jones and Baron Brantley were formally indicted by a grand jury. That meant that after reviewing the evidence and case materials, the jurors concluded there was enough reason to move the case to trial and begin a full criminal proceeding.
People accused in the murder of a Clark Atlanta University student pleaded not guilty late this afternoon.
Both of them pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against them, which included
Both of them pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges, including felony murder causing a person's death while committing a serious felony, false imprisonment unlawfully restraining or confining another person against their will, concealing the death of another, intentionally hiding or attempting to hide the fact that someone has died.
Baron Brantley also faced additional charges violating the terms of his probation and interfering with someone's ability to make an emergency phone call. These charges became a separate part of the case and made his legal situation even more complicated. According to investigators, at the time of the events, he was already under supervision within the justice system because of previous offenses. Violating probation meant that he had failed to follow the restrictions and requirements that had been set for him. And the charge of interfering with an emergency call suggested that someone may have been prevented from reaching out for help at a critical moment. For investigators, these details were important because they added more context to what may have happened that night. Despite the seriousness of the circumstances, no charges for rape or sexual assault were ultimately filed. For many people following the case, that came as a surprise. Earlier, that issue had drawn significant public attention and was one of the reasons Alexis's story had received so much coverage. The Office of the District Attorney also announced that prosecutors would not seek the death penalty for either defendant. That decision meant that if they were convicted, The most severe possible punishment would be life in prison. Prosecutors chose to focus on proving the defendant's guilt rather than pursuing the maximum sentence available under the law. For the victim's family, this became another difficult moment in what was already a long and painful process. Meanwhile, it became clear that Barron had been known to law enforcement long before this case. He had a significant criminal history and several previous arrests. His name had appeared in police reports many times, even before the events connected to Alexis's case. Those arrests involved various offenses that pointed to a long history of conflict with the law. Among them were arrests for
theft by basically stealing someone else's property without permission, battery, physical assault, or causing harm to another person, traffic violations, breaking traffic laws while driving, fleeing or attempting to flee from a police officer trying to escape from law enforcement during a stop or investigation, family violence, acts of violence committed within a household or against a family member, cruelty to children in the third-degree charges related to behavior that can endanger a child's safety or well-being.
Over the course of 2 years, he had been placed in that jail 5 different times, and in those cases, no bond was granted.
No bond for a young woman accused of killing her friend who was also her roommate.
During today's virtual hearing, Crawford's mother and father pleaded with the judge to not issue a bond for Jones, with the mother's tearful plea saying her daughter's killing was senseless. Jones was previously denied bond, but today her attorneys asked the judge to reconsider, arguing she has helped with the investigation, has no previous criminal history other than a misdemeanor. They also pointed out that she has ties to the community and doesn't have a history of threatening or intimidating anyone. But prosecutors allege they found direct messages from Jones on social media encouraging Brantley to destroy surveillance video evidence from the apartment complex where Jones and Crawford lived. And they argued she was on probation for a DUI when Crawford was killed. Crawford's mother and father also addressed the judge during Jones's bond hearing today.
No reason at all. Oh my God. But Jordan took it right. Jordan chose to go to the evil side.
In the end, both defendants were again denied bond. The judge made that decision after reviewing several factors that, in his view, showed serious risks for the case going forward. During the hearing, he stated that Jordan Jones posed a significant flight risk. That conclusion came after investigators learned that just a few hours after the death of Alexis Crawford, Jordan had withdrawn from Clark Atlanta University. The decision appeared sudden and raised many questions for investigators. According to case records, she was also planning to return home to her parents in Michigan. For the court, that became an important signal that she might try to leave the area and distance herself from the situation surrounding the tragedy. It was also revealed that she had attempted to contact witnesses connected to the case. For investigators, that was another alarming detail. Any attempt to reach out to potential witnesses can be seen as a possible effort to influence their testimony or interfere with the investigation. In addition, authorities said she had attempted to conceal evidence. According to investigators, when Jordan spoke with members of Alexis's family, she told them that the rape kit results showed no DNA. But that statement did not match the actual forensic results. The analysis directly pointed to Barron Brantley. That contradiction raised even more questions for investigators. For prosecutors, it appeared to be an attempt to create a false impression about the investigation and hide important information from the victim's family. Her attorney did not directly respond to that accusation. Instead, he said that Jordan had supported Alexis after she reported the assault. According to the defense, she had been there for her friend during a difficult moment and tried to help her get through the situation. However, considering that she later allowed Barron to move back into the apartment, that claim seemed like a major contradiction. For many people, it simply didn't make sense. If she truly supported Alexis, then allowing the man accused of attacking her to return to the same apartment raised serious doubts about her statements. Later on, Barron and Jordan began blaming each other. Each of them tried to distance themselves from what happened that night. Their versions of events started to differ, and both attempted to shift responsibility for the tragedy onto the other. In response, their lawyers filed motions to separate the cases. They argued that each suspect should have a separate trial for the murder charges. According to the defense, a joint trial could create unfair complications and make it harder to evaluate the evidence properly. Meanwhile, the case itself continued to drag on. Court proceedings were delayed multiple times for different reasons. One major factor was the pandemic restrictions that affected the court system and forced hearings to be postponed indefinitely. Months slowly turned into years, and Alexis's family was left waiting while the case moved forward through the slow process of the legal system. And it was during this period that new developments emerged, developments that would become another serious blow for both the family and the prosecution. What happened in 2023 would once again change the course of this case.
New developments in the murder case of Clark Atlanta University student Alexis Crawford more than 3 years ago. During a hearing Friday, we learned her accused killer's confession cannot be used in court.
The court later ruled that the confession of Barron Brantley could not be used as evidence. The reason was that there was a possibility he had been under the influence of drugs during the interrogation. The court concluded that under those circumstances, anything said during questioning could be questioned in terms of reliability. If there is even a small chance that a suspect was not fully clear-headed, it can affect how trustworthy those statements are considered. Because of that, the confession was ruled inadmissible in court. That decision put detectives in a difficult position. Suddenly, one of the key elements of the case was at risk. Investigators now had to prove not only the suspect's guilt, but also that they had acted properly and within the law during the interrogation. They needed to convince the court that they had not taken advantage of Barron's possible condition to pressure him into saying something or to obtain statements that benefited the investigation. Detectives insisted that the confession had been voluntary. According to them, Barron described the events himself, and his statements were not the result of pressure or manipulation. Investigators also pointed out that his account matched the version of events previously described by Jordan Jones. In their view, the two stories fit together into one consistent picture of what had happened that night. But while the court was dealing with legal details and procedural questions, the case started drawing even more public attention. Another wave of reaction came when news broke that the court was considering allowing Barron to request bond. For many people, that possibility came as a shock. This was already a case that had caused enormous public reaction and left a deep wound for the family of Alexis Crawford. The news spread quickly, and the reaction was immediate. For the family, it was devastating. The very thought that someone connected to this tragedy might have a chance to walk free even temporarily felt almost unbearable. It reopened old wounds and brought them right back to the painful memories of what had happened. Alexis's mother, Tammy Crawford, later wrote in a letter, "The constant pain we feel from the cold-blooded murder of Alexis by Barron Brantley and Jordan Jones, people we welcomed into our home more than once, is ongoing and almost unbearable. I was deeply disturbed by the very possibility that Barron might be released on bond." Mark Al Hutchin also spoke to those gathered, his voice quiet but steady. When you really stop and think about what happened, the realization is just overwhelming. Two 21-year-olds took the life of this young woman for no reason, with no justification. It's completely senseless. This isn't just something confusing or difficult to explain. It's something that's almost impossible to put into words. And when you look at the whole picture, it really starts to feel like you're looking at the true face of evil. His words hung in the air, leaving behind a heavy silence as everyone present tried to process the scale of the tragedy. As of March 2023, no trial date had been set for either defendant. Months continued to pass, and the case remained in a state of uncertainty. Alexis's family kept waiting for progress, but the legal system moved slowly, step by step, often leaving more questions than answers. Because of the problems surrounding key evidence and the complicated legal issues tied to bond, it's still unclear how long the case might continue. Every new hearing, every procedural decision becomes another reminder of how long and exhausting the road to justice can be. And this long period of waiting while the legal system continues working through the case has become a real test for everyone involved. It's that helpless feeling where people are forced to wait, unable to speed anything up or change what's happening. For Alexis's family and friends, that weight is incredibly hard to carry. Every day of waiting reminds them of a loss that can never truly be filled. At just 21 years old, Alexis Crawford was only beginning her adult life. She had opportunities ahead of her, plans for the future, dreams she was just starting to build. But in her final days, she experienced betrayal from the people around her. People she should have been able to trust turned out to be the ones who destroyed everything. And the fact that her life was taken in such a cruel and remorseless way only adds more pain to an already heartbreaking story. Her sister, Alexandria Crawford, said Alexis will always be her role model, a symbol of strength, resilience, and someone she always looked up to. For her, Alexis will forever remain a source of inspiration, a reminder of how bright, strong, and kind she truly was. And her father said,
Hold on to your kids. Love them. Talk to them. Appreciate them and listening to them. Don't stop listening to your kid.
And then Tammy Crawford added, nothing will ever bring my daughter back. But keeping the people responsible for her death in jail without bond would at least give me and my family a little peace of mind and a sense of safety while we wait for justice to finally be done.
I hear the woman screaming for her life. It's terrible. It sounds like a movie. Early in time, I think my neighbor just got shot.
Homicides are horrible. It's one of the worst crimes that you can commit. And what it does to the family, you really just have no idea how it just tears a family up.
Amy's family asked that she does not receive the death penalty, so prosecutors are now recommending a life sentence.
And he just kept going, and I couldn't stop it.
A 49-year-old man is gunned down outside his own home at 7:30 in the morning. 9 shots, practically point blank, 7 of them hit, 3 straight to the head. His wife is standing right there, watching him collapse onto the sidewalk. After the shooting, the attacker forces Jennifer Faith to the ground. He wraps her hands with duct tape, tries to pull the rings off her fingers, rips the wedding band from Jamie's hand. Then he jumps into a black Nissan Titan with a Texas Rangers sticker on the back window and just drives off. This happens on a quiet street in Dallas in broad daylight. On October 8th, the couple had celebrated 15 years together. The very next day, her husband was brutally shot in front of her eyes. And this isn't some random act of violence. This is a case built on cold calculation, layered lies, and a murder orchestrated by the one person the victim called his soulmate. I'm telling you right now, this story will honestly bring you to tears. Like, it's that devastating. But let's go all the way back to the beginning so you can walk through this story with me step by step. Today we're in North Oak Cliff, Texas. Back in 2020, James, everyone called him Jamie, and Jennifer Faith were living here. They'd already been together for 15 years. They actually met on a blind date, and that first night, they talked for hours, like nonstop. They couldn't believe how much they had in common, and from that point on, they basically never separated. Before Jamie, Jennifer had been married twice. She had a daughter, Amber, from her first marriage. Her husband at the time had said he didn't want kids at all, and their relationship completely fell apart when she found out she was pregnant. Jennifer later shared that in the span of one single month, she finished her dissertation, graduated, and gave birth to Amber. After that, she married again, a man named Rick, but that relationship ended pretty quickly too. And years later, when she met Jamie, people said they were the perfect match. Jamie devoted himself to Jennifer and Amber immediately, no hesitation. They got married in Las Vegas in 2012. Amber loved Jamie like he was her biological father, and she actually asked him to officially adopt her. He was so emotional about it, he almost signed the papers on the spot. Jennifer would say that Jamie was the only real father Amber had ever truly known because he'd been in her life since she was 8 years old. It really seemed like everything had finally fallen into place for the three of them. Their friends were genuinely happy for them. After years of heartbreak for Jennifer, and for Jamie too, who used to tell friends he'd probably end up alone forever they had finally found each other. They were fun to be around, always down for get-togethers, loved hosting people, throwing parties, bringing everyone together. Jennifer worked in healthcare management. Jamie had spent 7 years in a leadership role in the IT department at American Airlines. Friends said computers and tech had been his thing since high school, so the fact that he built such a successful career, that wasn't surprising at all. He loved video games and was a huge sports fan. Jamie and Jennifer lived comfortably, they traveled a lot, enjoyed their life together. So when US Airways merged with American Airlines and Jamie's job required them to relocate, they were more than willing to go. The Faith family moved to Dallas, settling into a beautiful home on a quiet street in the 1000 block of South Waverly Drive. They were the kind of couple who gave each other sweet gifts for no reason at all. Any excuse to celebrate, they'd take it. That year, for Valentine's Day, Jennifer gave Jamie a personalized book thanking him for making her life so wonderful. October 8th, 2020, the couple had just celebrated the 15th anniversary of their very first date, a huge milestone in their lives. The next morning, at 7:30, they stepped outside together to walk their dog, Maggie. It was already light out. Quiet, peaceful. The doorbell camera captured them leaving the house and walking down the street side by side. And then, out of nowhere, no warning at all, a masked man started approaching them from behind. He pulled out a gun and fired 9 times in rapid succession with barely any pause between the shots. 7 bullets hit Jamie, 3 to the head, 3 to the chest, 1 to the groin. Between the gunshots and Jennifer's screams, neighbors began rushing out of their homes, trying to understand what was happening. All right, guys, before we keep going with this story, I just want to take about 15 seconds of your time and ask you to support the channel with a little bit of activity. Pause for a quick second, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from and what the weather's like there right now. I always love seeing where you're tuning in from. And if you want to, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. It seriously helps more than you think. Okay, let's keep going. Then the shooter turned his attention to Jennifer. He forced her to the ground and bound her wrists with duct tape. Then he tried to pull the rings off her fingers. He even made a move toward Maggie, while Jamie was still lying there on the pavement. He ripped the wedding band off Jamie's hand, jumped into a small black pickup truck, and sped away. The smell of gunpowder hung in the air. Neighbors stood frozen in shock. And all around them, people were already calling 911.
I hear the woman screaming for her life, hysterical. It sounded like a movie. So I hurry up and call the police saying, hurry and come, I think my neighbor just got shot.
Law enforcement got there fast, but there was nothing they could do. 49-year-old Jamie Faith was dead. Neighbors gathered around Jennifer, trying to comfort her right there in the street as she completely fell apart. It was a shocking, painful scene. Just the day before, she had been celebrating their 15th anniversary. Just minutes earlier, she had been walking the dog with her husband. And now he had been shot right in front of her. In a matter of seconds, her life and Amber's life had been turned completely upside down.
A woman from Dallas is trying to cope with a sudden loss that no one should feel. Her husband was murdered on their morning walk, and she had to watch it happen. Tiffany Liu has more on the case that's shaken not only their family, but the community as well.
On Friday morning in Oak Cliff, a husband and wife took their dog on a walk, like they always do. But that would be their last walk together. Dallas police say the couple was approached by a man in a mask on Waverly. He shot and killed 49-year-old James Faith.
Typically, that's not how robberies occur. Typically, they just want your property. No one goes to that extreme.
Police say the suspect tried duct taping the woman's hands together to steal the jewelry off her fingers, and they say he may have been trying to abduct her.
Had a mask on. She believed he was a Latin male, heavyset. He ran off when she screamed for help.
They believe he left in a black Nissan Titan with a Texas Ranger sticker on the back window.
So I'm asking the public to help us out.
Police are desperate to find the killer who took the life of Jamie Faith.
Homicides are horrible. It's one of the worst crimes that you can commit, and what it does to the family, you really just have no idea how it just tears a family up.
His wife is devastated. She tells me he was her best friend. He was the best husband and best father anyone could ask for.
But even with Jennifer completely overwhelmed by grief, the police didn't have the luxury of waiting. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. She was quickly brought in to give her statement.
I turned around and I just saw this person shoot and shoot. I couldn't believe, I didn't know why.
Was your husband like this? Did your husband say anything to him?
No, I think I was yelling no. I think he did the same thing. It just seemed quiet. That's all I remember are those shots.
And several shots?
Not a lot of shots. 6, 5, 6 maybe, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kept going. And I couldn't stop it. My husband's expression. Just like the light God. And so I was like the shock, and then I saw the person turn and like just dark eyes and coming toward me, and so I yelled no, and I had the dog, and I started to run, and he tackled me to the ground, and I stopped, ran, and he was hitting my face.
The fact that this happened in broad daylight was just staggering. No one could wrap their head around who would want Jamie dead. But sadly, police said Jamie's murder was just one of many violent crimes in Dallas that year. In 2020 alone, the city recorded more than 200 homicides. Still, whoever did this acted boldly. Like, this wasn't random chaos, it felt deliberate, personal. So the question was, did Jamie know his killer? Or was this some kind of robbery that went horribly wrong? But here's the thing, he was shot before anything was taken from him. That makes it feel like the theft was secondary, almost like an afterthought. Why? Could this brutal murder have been a cover for a kidnapping attempt? Was tying Jennifer up with duct tape meant to take her? There were just too many layers, too many unanswered questions. All Jennifer could really tell investigators was that the shooter was a man, fairly stocky, wearing a blue mask and a dark hoodie. She said his eyes were very dark, intense, piercing. Another neighbor who ran out to help gave the exact same description.
We got up, we did our normal good morning thing, and I heard running behind me, and I turned around, and then just shooting just started. I was running up this driveway, and he tackled me and started beating on me and taped my hands together. We just really need some answers. If anybody knows anything, please contact the detective. Somebody has got to know whose truck this is, because it's a black Nissan Titan extended cab. It had a Texas Ranger sticker in the back window, and so it was very distinctive from that point. I'm sure they're overextended and spread very thin, but it doesn't help me in terms of finding the answers that I really need. We actually had been here 3 years to the day we signed for our house when this happened.
So you bought this house October 9th, 3 years ago?
Correct.
Same day your husband is murdered.
And the day prior to that, on October 8th, we had just celebrated being together for 15 years. Oh my God. If you know what happened, I need that for closure. I need to make some sense out of this. It's been horrible. Devastating. I teeter between completely heartbroken and completely devastated every day. Amazingly caring, very kind. He would give you the shirt off his back. My partner, my best friend. I'm not supposed to be widowed at 48, you know? I just hope that at some point, maybe this person can recognize the gravity of what they've done. and feel some sort of guilt enough to come forward.
The only real leads police had were that the bullets came from a .45 caliber handgun and a black Nissan Titan with a large letter T sticker on the back window, which they believed represented the Texas Rangers. That suggested the killer likely lived in the region. Detectives asked the public for any information at all, anything that might connect to the case. A GoFundMe was set up to help Jennifer cover funeral expenses and support her and Amber without Jamie. And the response was immediate. More than $60,000 was raised in a short period of time. The organizer said they couldn't believe how quickly the donations came in. People just wanted to help in any way they could. Neighbors started bringing Jennifer meals, sitting with her so she wouldn't be alone. One by one, families stepped up. Before long, more than 50 households in the neighborhood were helping delivering groceries, essentials, whatever she and Amber needed just to get through the days.
Crime Stoppers raising the reward this week to $25,000, the murder of James Faith happening in front of his wife.
Do you think, sir, that this was a random robbery or something more sinister?
Right now, we know that the suspect did attempt to take property, but we're not going to limit any limit the motives behind this investigation.
You know that black Nissan pickup truck, the one with the Texas Rangers decal behind the driver's side, or think you do? Call Crime Stoppers or call Detective Chris Walton, 214-671-3632. Help track down the killers of James Faith.
Jennifer held 2 funerals for her husband, one in Dallas and another in Phoenix. At both services, they handed out keychains, cards, even drink coasters printed with phone numbers, just in case someone suddenly remembered something that could help the investigation. But detectives kept hitting a wall. There was no one in Jamie's life who stood out as a potential person of interest, let alone a suspect. Killing a man over a couple of rings? That felt extreme. Experts said the crime scene had all the markings of a professional hit a planned ambush, not some random act of violence. Jamie had installed several ring cameras, and one of them near the back gate captured something unsettling the night before he was killed. Around 2:30 in the morning, the footage shows a man walking around the yard of a neighboring house. The home was vacant at the time, so it definitely wasn't a neighbor. His build matched the description Jennifer had given. The fact that he was lingering nearby, watching the house of a man who would be dead just hours later, that told investigators this wasn't impulsive, this wasn't a robbery gone wrong, this was planned. They needed to talk to Jennifer again. Maybe she'd remember something, anything, even the smallest detail. They asked to examine her phone, and she handed it over without hesitation. That's where they found something interesting, just not what they expected. Investigators discovered a message she had sent to a friend, mentioning a man named Darren, someone she admitted she was having an emotional affair with. Strangely, there were no messages between Jennifer and Darren on her phone. None. But detectives were able to track down his last name and where he lived. His name was Darren Lopez. He lived more than 600 miles away, near Nashville, in a large rural area. Local authorities learned that Darren Lopez owned the exact make and model vehicle they were searching for, a black Nissan Titan pickup truck with a T sticker on the back window. That information was passed to police in Dallas. They arranged aerial surveillance of his home and placed him under watch. The truck was there. Investigators pulled his bank records and phone data. And from that moment on, things started moving fast. Even though there were no messages between them on Jennifer's phone, Darren hadn't deleted anything from his between September 20th and October 20th, just 1 month, Darren and Jennifer exchanged more than 14,000 calls and text messages. 14,000. That's hundreds every single day. And strangely, the only day they appeared to have no contact at all was the day Jamie was shot a full 28 hours of total silence. On October 8th, the same day Jennifer and Jamie celebrated their anniversary, Darren took his truck in for service. Then he entered Jamie and Jennifer's address into Google Maps. His phone was tracked, making an almost 12-hour drive to Dallas, Texas. Bank records showed that along the way, he stopped at gas stations, filled up the tank, bought Red Bull, and withdrew cash. When images of the pickup truck with that same T sticker began circulating in the media, Jennifer sent Darren a link to a news article about the case, including a photo of the sticker. She wrote, "I woke up in a panic, something's been eating at me and it's telling me you need to take that sticker off the back window of your truck. I'm not usually dramatic about stuff like this, but I really think you need to remove it as soon as possible, like today. The next day, Darren removed the sticker, but it was already too late. Police had him under surveillance, and during an aerial flyover of his property, they had already captured clear images of that exact T sticker on the back of his truck. Just like that, Darren and Jennifer became the main and essentially the only suspects. And here's the thing, their story actually started long before anyone realized. They had dated in high school and continued seeing each other in college, but after Darren completed basic military training and was deployed to Korea, they drifted apart. Jennifer moved on, married her first husband, and they lost touch. Darren eventually married too and became a father to 4 daughters. In 2018, he and his wife separated. Friends said that after the divorce and after leaving the military, he became increasingly withdrawn. During his service, he had suffered a traumatic brain injury when a roadside bomb exploded in Iraq, killing 19 of his fellow soldiers. After he was discharged, he struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder, and that, combined with the divorce and living alone in a remote area, only deepened his isolation. His daughters later moved in with their mother, and when the pandemic began, friends were genuinely worried he would retreat even further into himself. But instead, Darren decided to use that time to reconnect with people from his past. In March of 2020, 7 months before Jamie's murder, Darren reached out to Jennifer through an email address he found on LinkedIn. In that very first message, he told her he had been quietly following her on social media for several months. He shared details about his life, about his kids, about their shared past. And he admitted that, without even knowing it, she had helped him get through 20 years of military service. He said he had wanted to write to her for a long time, that he had thought about her often over the years. Jennifer responded just a few hours later, and it honestly sounded like the message lit something up inside her. She wrote that she had been searching for him too. She even knew that he had lost his father in 2015. Her email was much longer, much more detailed. She talked about every part of her life, her family, her marriages, and attached photos. She ended her message with the words, "I'm sure you weren't expecting to get an entire novel back, but once I started writing, I just couldn't stop. I really hope you're doing well and that you're happy. I truly missed you all these years, and there were so many moments when I wished I could talk to you. Thank you for not giving up on finding me. Love, Jen." Before long, their connection turned into a full-blown emotional affair. They were talking about 5-year plans, about how one day they wanted to be together. Jennifer called him her soulmate. But Darren hesitated. Even though the feelings were clearly there, he said he didn't want to destroy her marriage. Jennifer told him there was no intimacy left between her and Jamie. Darren kept saying she needed to be honest with her husband, that she should tell him the truth about how she felt. Still, investigators felt like something was missing. There was a piece of the puzzle they hadn't found yet. Detectives kept digging through emails, even recovering ones that had been deleted. Meanwhile, Jennifer, seemingly unaware of where the investigation was headed, was trying to collect life insurance money. In November of 2020, she filed a claim with Metropolitan Life Insurance Company for $629,000. But she was told that until she was officially cleared as a suspect, she wouldn't receive a single dollar. She told Darren. And somehow, the two of them were confident the money would eventually come through. They even talked about buying a house together in Tennessee. Since reconnecting, Jennifer had been sending Darren large amounts of money and expensive gifts. A brand new television, 2 credit cards. And here's the part that makes you pause. She paid off the balances on those credit cards using the same $60,000 raised through GoFundMe. At the time, Darren was in serious financial trouble. His house was on the verge of foreclosure after months of missed mortgage payments. His water had even been shut off. In one of her emails, Jennifer wrote, "Here are both of my main credit cards. The Amex doesn't have a limit, and the Visa has, I think, around $35,000 available. Please don't hesitate to use them for anything you need, especially if it's something for the girls." In early 2021, investigators decided they finally had enough evidence to make an arrest. But Before they moved in, they wanted to see if the suspects would make one more mistake. On January 10th, a detective scheduled a meeting with Jennifer. Right before that meeting, she sent Darren a message. It read, "Do not text me on Monday. Sunday night, I'm going to factory reset my phone after deleting the messages. If they ask about you, you're an old friend going through a divorce. We talk every night because I'm supporting you and helping with the girls." Just in case they check the phone records. January 11th, 2021. They showed up at Darren's house with handcuffs.
Police in Tennessee arrested 48-year-old Darren Lopez, this man here, on Monday, and he's now being charged with murder of a Texas man after police say he allegedly drove from Tennessee to Dallas to shoot his ex-girlfriend's husband in October of 2020.
The warrant describes Faith only as a witness. She didn't answer our call for comment Tuesday and isn't facing charges.
Darren was arrested on state murder charges and also hit with a federal firearm offense. He pleaded not guilty to both counts and was held on a $1 million bond. Inside his home, investigators found the exact handgun connected to Jamie's murder. Ballistic testing confirmed it. They also found credit cards in Jennifer's name. Later, traces of Jamie's blood were discovered on the weapon and inside Darren's vehicle. In the truck, police also found a blue mask, the kind they believe was worn on the day of the shooting. After Darren's arrest, Jennifer was questioned again. She denied any inappropriate relationship, insisting they were just close friends. And here's what's chilling. For months, she had been talking nonstop, pleading publicly for help finding her husband's killer. But once a suspect was arrested, she went quiet. The man accused of murdering her husband was in custody, and suddenly she had nothing more to say. A week later, Jennifer transferred $118,000 from her checking account to an unidentified third party. Just days after that, she asked someone to pass a message to Darren. "I just need to be careful because every message is being monitored. Tell him as soon as possible that I will always be his." Through that same person, Darren replied, "Be strong for us." At that point, the walls were closing in around Jennifer. Less than a month later, in February of 2021, 48-year-old Jennifer Faith was charged with obstruction of justice in connection with her husband's murder. She pleaded not guilty. But the investigation was far from over and new details were surfacing almost daily. Detectives continued recovering deleted emails, and what they uncovered shifted everything. Just months after reconnecting, the tone of their communication had taken a dark, disturbing turn. In addition to writing as herself, Jennifer created a fake email account in Jamie's name. From that account, she began sending messages to Darren. The very first email was shockingly graphic and aggressive. It described in detail a long history of physical and sexual abuse that Jamie had supposedly inflicted on Jennifer. The message included photos of so-called injuries, but it was all fabricated, and the images later traced back to stock photo websites. There was never any evidence to support her claims that Jamie had abused her. One expert later called it one horrific lie after another. Darren responded to the person he believed was Jamie. "I talk to her at night because she's afraid of you. You show up in her nightmares. I will step in to make sure she's safe and not being hurt in any way I can." He ended that message with, "Be the man you say you want to be." In another email, there was a photo of a wound on a woman's neck with the caption, "Nice job. Enjoy knowing you can't do anything about it." That image was real, but it wasn't from abuse. It was from a car accident Jennifer had been in 8 years earlier. She told Darren that Jamie beat her, that he sexually assaulted her, that he allowed other men to assault her, that he burned her, that he attacked her with weapons. She went to terrifying extremes to pull Darren in spreading the most grotesque lies about her own husband manipulating everyone around her. At some point, it's unclear exactly when Jamie found out about the affair. Not the lies, just the communication between them. And it devastated him. In August, Jennifer told a friend she had hit the brakes on the relationship with Darren because Jamie was so hurt she couldn't do that to him. But that wasn't true. She created yet another fake email account, this time pretending to be a mutual friend of hers and Jamie's This friend claimed to have witnessed the abuse and urged Darren to step in and save Jennifer. And then, after months of building the perfect storm, weaving lie after lie, Jennifer called Darren and asked him to kill Jamie, Darren later said. If I didn't do something, she was going to die. I made that decision right then. By October, the plan was set. Darren drove 10 hours to Dallas, intending to stage the murder as a robbery gone wrong. He hid in a neighboring yard and waited for 5 hours until the couple came outside for their walk. After shooting Jamie, ripping off his wedding ring, and fleeing, Darren threw his own wedding band out the window of his truck. The scale of what investigators uncovered shocked even seasoned detectives. Fast forward to February 2021. Darren was behind bars, awaiting trial. Jennifer was appearing in court on obstruction charges. When Darren learned about the fake email accounts and realized that while nothing could justify what he had done, he had been manipulated, Jennifer wrote him a letter. A short note to say this: I never lied to you, and I never sent you emails from any account other than my own under my own name. There's so much more I want to say, but I can't right now. Despite the evidence showing that she had created and used those fake accounts, Jennifer kept denying it. The documents, the digital footprints, login histories, every single trail pointed straight to her. But she held on to her version of events like her life depended on it. She didn't back down. She didn't admit anything. She didn't change her story. This wasn't some impulsive lie. It was stubborn, calculated, repeated over and over again. With every new piece of evidence, the case against her grew heavier. And with every denial, she seemed more disconnected from reality. It was like she was desperately trying to hold up a structure that had already started collapsing. Darren's attorney later said it took 6 more months to convince him that Jennifer had fabricated everything she claimed about Jamie Faith. 6 months. 6 months of conversations, explanations, going through evidence piece by piece. It didn't happen overnight. Darren clung to the version of events where he believed he was stopping a dangerous man. But slowly, the facts pushed the emotions aside. The messages, the timestamps, the inconsistencies, and finally the realization that the story about Jamie's cruelty had been manufactured from the very beginning. In October of that same year, exactly 1 year after Jamie was killed, police filed new charges against Jennifer. The date felt symbolic. 1 full year, a closed circle, and another official step forward in a case that month after month kept revealing more and more disturbing details.
New this morning, the Dallas woman whose boyfriend allegedly shot and killed her husband is now charged with orchestrating the murder.
Realizing that, if convicted, she could be facing the death penalty, and seeing just how overwhelming the evidence against her had become, Jennifer Faith suddenly changed her stance.
An Oak Cliff woman has pleaded guilty in federal court to orchestrating her husband's murder with help from her out-of-state boyfriend.
Jamie's family asked that she does not receive the death penalty, so prosecutors are now recommending a life sentence. She'll officially receive her sentence in May.
She pleaded guilty, and that was the turning point in the case. No dramatic speeches, no attempt to drag it out in court. Prosecutors agreed to drop the obstruction charge and recommended life in prison as part of the plea deal. It was a formal agreement, cold, precise, every word carefully measured. But there was one condition the prosecution refused to compromise on. And it wasn't about the sentence. It wasn't about legal wording. It was about honor for Jamie Faith's family, for his friends, for the people who had listened to her statements, read her messages, sympathized with her, and believed he was dangerous. Jennifer had to officially admit that Jamie had never abused her. Not physically, not emotionally, not in any hidden or implied way. It had to be clear, direct, no gray areas. She signed a statement acknowledging that every single allegation was fabricated, that the story about fear, about threat, about a supposedly violent husband had been a lie from beginning to end. That document wasn't just another piece of paperwork. It became an official restoration of Jamie's name, because death is irreversible. But at least the truth finally written down in black and white remained. February 2022,
A Dallas woman who convinced a man to murder her husband will spend the rest of her life in prison for her role in the plot.
On Tuesday, a federal judge sentenced Faith to life in prison.
Jennifer Faith will spend the rest of her life in prison. The judge called her pure evil and ordered her to pay $6,500 in restitution to Jamie's family, along with a $250,000 fine. And even from behind bars, Jennifer filed a motion asking the court to transfer $200,000 from Jamie's assets to her. Detectives described that move as spineless, a glimpse into who she really was. This wasn't someone pleading guilty out of remorse. She acted in her own interest, always. Jennifer's second husband, Rick, also appeared in court. And despite the horror of everything that had come out, he said he wasn't surprised. He called her the cruelest person he had ever known. According to Rick, she had told him that her first husband abused her stories, almost identical to the ones she later told Darren. Rick said those stories were so graphic, so violent, so detailed, that at one point he himself wanted to kill the man. And Jennifer, he said, seemed to enjoy provoking his anger, watching him get worked up for her. Once again, there was never any evidence that her first husband had abused her. Even after her guilty plea, Darren continued to plead not guilty. In July of 2023, jury selection began in his case. His defense attorney argued that Darren believed Jennifer was in immediate danger when he shot Jamie, and that under Texas law, that could qualify as self-defense. They also emphasized that because of his post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, Darren was especially vulnerable to Jennifer's manipulation. If convicted of first-degree murder, he was facing anywhere from 5 to 99 years in prison. If the charge were reduced to second-degree murder, the range would have been 2 to 20 years. Jurors were presented with a mountain of evidence, text messages, emails, surveillance footage, the truck, the gun. But despite the long list of witnesses, there was one person everyone was waiting to hear from, Darren himself. And to almost everyone's surprise, he chose to testify.
Alerted you or made you think that she was in serious danger more than ever before, right?
Well, yes, sir. I mean, we were talking daily. Like I said, he was starting to abuse her at that point.
And also evidence that you were not texting with Jamie. So.
Yes.
And that really the only person you were really talking to all this time was Jennifer.
Yes, sir.
How did that make you feel?
I was devastated.
Did Jennifer ask you to kill him?
Yes. All the emotions of everybody that I've lost. I started thinking about Ethan. He was my team sergeant's son who was murdered in Kentucky. We were there with, that we couldn't stop or do anything with. My granddaughter, Skylie. She died when I was in Iraq. She drowned. Thinking about it, I was talking to my daughter Summer about it and saying, Dad, why aren't you here? And this is where she used my honor and my love for my girls. Because I would want to protect them as most I can. I took an innocent life. I took Amber's dad from her. A man who was like me. My 2 oldest daughters are my stepdaughters, but they're my daughters. I would never ever hurt Amber that way. Take her dad from that. That's what gets me, how Jennifer could do that to her daughter.
On cross-examination, Assistant District Attorney Brandy Mitchell pressed Lopez.
But you don't tell them that you're the love of your life, the woman you kissed at the Eiffel Tower, is getting gang raped. We got to do something. That never occurs to you.
Yes, it does.
But you don't do it.
No.
It's completely absurd, Mr. Lopez, that you and another grown man are bouncing back and forth doing updates on the fact that your girlfriend just got raped.
The defense team has tried to show that Lopez was manipulated by Jennifer Faith, and she seized on the fact that he had a brain injury and PTSD from the military. Lopez described himself as a victim, but seemed to recognize how that might appear to the jury.
But I'm not going to say I'm just the total victim. No, man, that would be disrespectful to Mr. Faith.
Ladies and gentlemen, the idea that Darren Lopez
was justified in killing, in executing Jamie Faith. It is as absurd and unbelievable as those fake emails. Even if you give him every benefit of the doubt, even if you were to believe all of that, it still does not justify the murder of Jamie Faith.
Because of his service to this country, now he viewed danger differently. Because again, you have to look at it through his eyes. You have to put yourself in his position and how he viewed things. You know what? Yes, Jennifer's not sitting in this courtroom. She's not on trial, but her acts are intertwined so much that she is on trial and what she did. The only way the state can get around that is by trying to say, well, Darren must have known. He had to know that these emails were fake. That's the only way they're going to get around it. Because if you believe what Darren believed, that those were actual emails, then you know that she led him to do what he did. And this all started, just like my co-counsel said, in high school. He loved her. These memories were so important to him that he held on to them. Even when he first entered the military, he put them on a card. So if he was ever captured and tortured, he could use those memories to get through that traumatic event. She uses anybody the way she wants to. You heard from her prior boyfriend how she's been doing this since high school. Darren may have pulled the trigger, but she pulled Darren.
In July of 2023, almost 3 years after Jamie was killed, the jury reached a verdict.
Is that right?
Yes.
We, the jury, unanimously find the defendant, Darren Lopez, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment. We, the jury, having previously found the defendant, Darren Lopez, guilty of murder, unanimously assess the punishment of the defendant at confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for a term of 62 years and a fine of $10,000.
Darren Lopez was sentenced to 62 years in prison. Now 51 years old, he said that at the moment of his arrest, he genuinely believed it had been worth it because in his mind, he had saved Jennifer and Amber from a man he thought was dangerous. Even with handcuffs on his wrists, he was still holding on to that version of reality, the belief that he wasn't a murderer, but a rescuer. That what he did was brutal, yes, but necessary. I became her weapon, I understand that now. There was no drama in the way he said it, no performance, just a flat acknowledgement. He admitted he had been used, that he allowed himself to be used, but at the same time, he didn't completely abandon the logic that led him to pull the trigger. He added that, in his view, Jennifer was the true criminal and that he was glad she was behind bars too. There was no sympathy in his voice, just firm conviction that the greater responsibility was hers. He also said he planned to appeal, like he was leaving himself one small chance to rewrite the ending of this story. Prosecutors pointed out that he had countless other options, dozens of chances to stop, to walk away, to call the police, to cut off contact. But he chose this path, a deliberate one, a fatal one. At the same time, they acknowledged that he had expressed remorse for killing Jamie Faith and had at least taken responsibility for his role. He didn't deny the facts. He didn't claim it was fiction. He admitted it plainly. He pulled the trigger. In a 2020 interview with Dateline NBC, Darren was asked, "Do you think she ever really loved you?" The question just kind of hung there. Simple, personal, painful. He shrugged. I don't know. And somehow that short answer said more than a long explanation ever could. Doubt, uncertainty, maybe even the realization that he believed in something that never truly existed. According to sources, Amber moved away from the neighborhood with the family dog, Maggie. She left behind the place where every corner held a memory of what happened. Now, she speaks to her mother in prison a few times a week. Short calls, brief conversations, a connection that still exists even after everything. Everyone who donated through GoFundMe had their money returned. What began as support for a grieving widow turned into a bitter recognition of betrayal. And the trust that had been given along with those donations collapsed just as quickly. Like so many of the cases we cover, this one leaves more questions than answers. What pushed Jennifer to do this? What was happening in her mind? Why did she convince herself this was the only way out? How do you go from a 15-year marriage to a man she publicly spoke about with love to coldly planning his murder in a matter of months? To orchestrate something this twisted? To drag Jamie's name through the mud and then to arrange his death? Step by step, message by message, decision by decision. The speed of the escalation is terrifying because this wasn't a sudden emotional explosion. It was a process. And that's what makes this story truly chilling. Prosecutor Rick Calvert said,
"I've never worked a case with this many twists. This one is as brutal, cold-blooded, and calculated as it is senseless and honestly just plain bizarre."
There was one thing everyone said about Jamie Faith. He adored his wife and he adored his daughter Amber. Friends said it, neighbors said it, coworkers said it. Whenever he talked about his family, there was this pride in his voice, this warmth in his eyes when he mentioned his wife. He didn't just love them, he lived for them. His family was the center of everything. From his perspective, he had the perfect family, the perfect job, the perfect life. Not something random, not something temporary, something he had worked for, step by step, for years. Stability, peace, that feeling of finally everything being where it's supposed to be. He believed he had made it through the hard part, that now he could just live, just be happy. And that's the life that was taken from him, suddenly, violently, without even a second to understand what was happening. Everything he built over years, gone in a single moment. And maybe the most devastating part of this entire story, he never knew the truth. He never found out that the woman he believed was his soulmate, the person he trusted without question, had orchestrated it all. The woman he gave his heart to was the one standing behind his end. And in that betrayal, colder than the crime itself, that's where the real horror of this story lives. Guys, I truly want to thank each and every one of you for staying with me all the way to the end of this video. This story is incredibly heavy, painful, and I want to be completely honest with you. While I was putting this together, rereading the details over and over, trying to piece everything into one clear narrative, there were moments when the tears just came. Some parts were really hard to sit with, hard to process. But I felt like it was important to tell this story exactly as it is. No softening it, no looking away. Please don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you're thinking, what you felt after hearing all of this. If this case moved you, you can subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It takes just a few seconds for you, but it honestly makes a huge difference for the growth of this channel. Thank you again, truly, for your time, your attention, and your trust. Take care of yourselves. Take care of the people you love, and I'll see you in the next video.
Here at home, the murder of a jogger in Queens has left a community on edge as the hunt for her killer continues.
At around 10:30 at night, police officers were moving slowly through the thick reeds along the running trail in Spring Creek Park in Brooklyn. Then, suddenly, they heard a man scream. When the officers rushed closer, they saw a father standing over his daughter's body. Karina Vetrano, a 30-year-old woman, was lying face down on the ground. Her athletic top and shorts had been pulled down. There were bruises on her face. Her teeth were broken, and her legs were covered in scratches. The officers tried to pull the father away from her body, but he wouldn't let go. He just kept repeating the same words over and over.
"I have to take my daughter home."
Just a few hours earlier, Karina had simply gone out for a run. She was an experienced runner and used to jog along that trail all the time with her father. But that day, he stayed home because of a back injury. Right before she left the house, she told him everything would be fine. 2 hours passed, and she never came back. When detectives began examining the crime scene, one thing became painfully clear. Karina had fought until the very end. At one point, she even bit her attacker so hard that she broke her own teeth. Investigators later found DNA under her fingernails, but when they ran it through the national database, it didn't match anyone, which meant only one thing. Somewhere nearby, there was a man who had brutally attacked a woman in the middle of the day and then disappeared without a trace. But what investigators discovered later turned out to be far more horrifying than just a murder. DNA analysis revealed a terrifying secret, and when police finally found the killer, some of the officers said it was so disturbing that it honestly gave them chills. A few of them even needed psychological help afterward. So to really understand how this all happened, we have to go back to the very beginning. Karina Vetrano, a 30-year-old runner, was the kind of person who always pushed herself, always trying to go a little farther and a little faster. That day didn't seem any different from the others. At around 5 in the afternoon, she stepped out of her house to go for a run near Spring Creek, a quiet area that's part of East New York in Brooklyn. Spring Creek is a natural preserve that covers about 2 square miles. It's full of overgrown patches, tall weeds, and thick brush. The place sits just a few blocks from the home where Karina lived with her family. Most of the time she ran there with her father, Phil, a retired firefighter, but that day he stayed home because of a back injury. Phil felt uneasy about her going there alone. The area was pretty isolated, and he told her he didn't think it was a good idea for her to run there by herself. "Don't worry, I'll be fine," she told him. Just a few minutes before heading out for her run, Karina took a quick selfie. In the background of the photo, you can actually see her mom, Kathy, walking past behind her. Then Karina left the house. Phil later said that about 45 minutes after she walked out the door, he suddenly had this uneasy feeling, like something just wasn't right. By then, almost 2 hours had passed. Karina still hadn't come home. Phil tried calling her over and over again, but she never answered. So he reached out to a childhood friend of his, who was working with the New York City Police Department at the time. A patrol car was sent to the area to look for her. When officers couldn't find Karina, the search quickly expanded. Units from the 106th Precinct joined in, moving through thick reeds that were as tall as 10 feet. And even as night fell, the search continued.
When we were going along the trail and checking the area, there was this really strong sense of unease, said NYPD Detective Barry Brown. At one point, someone even said out loud, "This doesn't feel right."
Phil was also helping police during the search using the geolocation signals from Karina's phone. Investigators eventually moved toward a marshy area about 15 feet off the running trail. Local residents had raised concerns about that area before. The tall weeds there had long been considered a safety problem for the community. At around 10:30 that night, officers suddenly heard a man screaming and immediately ran in that direction. It was Phil. He had found his daughter's body lying face down on the ground. Officers had to physically pull him away because he just couldn't let her go. He kept repeating that he needed to take her home. Detectives, including Barry Brown and Lieutenant John Russo, determined that Karina had bruises on her face and multiple injuries. Her teeth were broken, and there were abrasions on her legs. Her athletic top and shorts had been pulled down. Police said there was evidence pointing to sexual assault. Karina had fought her attacker so fiercely that she bit him with such force that she broke her own teeth. Investigators also noticed that one of her hands was tightly gripping grass, which suggested she may have been dragged across the ground. The chief of detectives, Boyce, later said it was obvious that
She fought until the very end.
The Office of the Medical Examiner later performed an autopsy and determined that her death was a homicide caused by strangulation. While the killer was choking her, he pressed his hand against her neck so hard that police could actually see the imprint of his hand. Phil later said he felt like it was somehow meant to be him who found her.
She led me to her. She needed her dad to be the one who found her. There's no doubt about that, he said.
It's one of the most intense and difficult crime scene searches in recent years. The view from Chopper 2 shows the demanding scope of the task.
We have a very active crime scene in a very remote area. So we're searching this as best we can in a very tough condition. The grass is very high. We're using machetes to search for additional evidence wherever we go.
Thursday, dozens of detectives fanned across Howard Beach, interviewing landscapers and home improvement workers.
They're just asking us what time we shut up and were you working Tuesday? They want this guy, whoever he is. I hope they get him.
Tonight, teams of search crews continue to tackle the dense weeds 300 feet at a time. First, hacking away by hand with machetes. They don't want to damage any possible clues as they clear the area.
We're clearing a very vast area in the back adjacent to the crime scene, and we're conducting a search for evidence.
The mother and father are just visibly shaken. They want closure. They want justice. They want to be able to bury their daughter with dignity.
We all jog and we all walk out here and enjoy, the serenity. And now I'm afraid to go out.
At his latest briefing, the chief of detectives calling this case, quote, a severe community threat and taking the following steps. A 6-month review of all Parks police activity in the area, collecting information from the police department's sex offender monitoring unit, and continuing with their cell phone tower investigation. But so far, just the possibility that the killer may not have been someone Karina Vetrano knew, well, it certainly leaves residents on edge.
My concerns is that, if it's somebody that lives in the area, that he might do it again.
Karina's father described Karina Vetrano as cheerful, driven, and successful, the kind of daughter every parent dreams about. Even though she was only 4 feet 11 inches tall, her personality was incredibly strong. She was very intelligent and had earned a master's degree from St. John's University. While still living with her parents, she worked as a speech therapist in Manhattan, helping children with disabilities. According to her friend Erica, Karina was like a spark, a tiny firework of energy with this contagious laugh that could fill an entire room. Besides her job as a speech therapist, she also worked part-time as a promoter at a club in Astoria, where she invited guests and earned a percentage from the revenue generated by VIP services. Friends also told investigators about a man named Paul, an employee at the nightclub where Karina worked. They said he had made unwanted advances toward her and would become aggressive when she rejected him. At one point, they believed he might even have been stalking her. However, police later ruled him out as a suspect after confirming that he was at work at the time of the murder. And the more investigators looked into the case, the more it started to seem like this might have been a random killing carried out by a stranger.
We are still in the process of crime scene collecting evidence right now. We will be out there for several days. That is a remote area. We have crime scenes set up there, and we plan to chop down just about every weed in that location until we satisfied that we got all the evidence. Now, we have a lot of forensic evidence acquired so far, but we're not getting a lot of Crime Stopper tips. We have 3, and they're all pretty generic. So we have since raised the reward up for $10,000 for any information. That is a very strong community. I'll be out there as soon as I leave here. We've got nothing but support from everybody out there. We hope to have more information. Now, this is a remote area. Young lady was running, still daylight, so hoping somebody saw something going into the park. Thus far, we don't have a lot of leads on this right now, but we're still collecting evidence. The evidence that we've collected thus far is in the Office of Chief Medical Examiner. We're hoping to get it up on a DNA profile in the next couple of days. We have them, I tell you, we have them often in this city. No one is this subject of murder. They're usually late at night. If we have them on the street, rape 1, where stranger rapes are down in this city, nonetheless, we still get them. This type of incident where you have a jogger in a park, in a recreational center, in daylight hours is extraordinarily unusual.
About 400 people came to Karina Vetrano's funeral. Among them were several members of the New York City Fire Department.
She was full of life, Phil said during his farewell speech. She lived every single day like it was her last, putting as much life as she could into every minute. In just 30 short years, she accomplished more than some people do in an entire lifetime. And we weren't just father and daughter. We were like one and the same.
She was a beautiful girl, young. I didn't know her, at all. But it's sad.
I'm going to address the coward.
Whoever killed her daughter, Karina, for the first time since the brutal murder, the Vetranos spoke with reporters outside of their home.
You know that my daughter was a force to be reckoned with. And I guarantee you that you will be reckoning with that force, not only for the rest of your pathetic life, but for the rest of eternity as you burn in hell. My daughter was a big believer of karma. And as you could see, she's magical. The whole world knows she's magical. And I guarantee you, you will pay.
Investigators were not able to recover usable DNA from the sexual assault evidence kit. However, they did manage to build a DNA profile using material found under Karina's fingernails, as well as on her cell phone, which was discovered just a few feet from her body. Her murder deeply shook the tight-knit community, and many people were living in fear, trying to understand what had happened. Thousands of people also donated money to a reward fund for information that could help identify the killer. Police contributed $25,000, the mayor's office added another $10,000, and the remaining funds were raised through GoFundMe.
They're tracking everything down. But what we need for someone to say, hello, I know the guy. That's what we're looking for. If I wake up and there's nothing for me to do, that's when the bottom's going to drop out. So I have to stay involved every day in every way. Today it's this. This is keeping me alive today.
A tractor with an industrial mower was brought to the crime scene, along with dozens of police officers from different units. Because the land where Karina's body was found was under federal ownership, the New York City Police Department asked the FBI for assistance. Federal agents supported the investigation by providing additional resources. They even used drones to survey the area from above. Police also said they checked a homeless encampment located more than 1 mile from the crime scene, but investigators eventually concluded it was likely not connected to the murder. They also questioned registered sex offenders who lived nearby, along with several people known to spend time living inside the park itself. To increase the resources dedicated to the investigation, the NYPD created a special task force. It included 2 detectives from each of the 8 units of Queens South. At the same time, officials had to address safety concerns inside the park. A federal officer explained that the large area where Karina was killed was only monitored around the perimeter, and even those checks were irregular throughout the day. The same officers were responsible for patrolling parts of Gateway National Park in Brooklyn and Queens, which also includes Spring Creek.
This is a serious challenge for us. We've talked about it with the community before, and honestly, it's no secret, said the commander of the U.S. Park Police District.
Investigators said that with no eyewitnesses, their most important lead was the DNA profile. That profile had already been checked, but at that moment, it still hadn't produced a match in the national database.
The CODIS database that we use for DNA was only created in 1998, so this person could have been in prison before that, explained Chief of Detectives Boyce. But it could also be someone younger, someone who's never been in prison at all.
In a case like this, it was crucial to check whether anything similar had happened before. Early in the investigation, detectives in New York said they had been contacted by the Massachusetts State Police to see if there might be a connection between Karina's murder and the killing of Vanessa Marcotte, a 27-year-old Google account manager who was found dead in Princeton on August 7th. At the time, Vanessa lived in New York City, but she had traveled to Princeton to visit her mother. On August 7th, she went out for a run and never came back home. Later, her body was discovered in a wooded area about half a mile from her mother's house. Authorities in New York said they could not confirm any connection between the 2 cases. Still, they emphasized that investigators would continue checking every possible lead. Chief of Detectives Boyce said investigators still believed Karina's murder was random. Their main theory hadn't changed. They believed the suspect escaped through the dense brush surrounding the crime scene and eventually made his way toward Belt Parkway. Police examined every possible escape route, but surveillance cameras did not capture any clear image of a suspect. Every house near the park was checked, and residents were interviewed. Investigators even used the phrase, "a needle in a haystack." And honestly, that's exactly what the search felt like. As the high-profile case continued to draw more public attention, a Verizon employee who had been working in Spring Creek Park on the day Karina was killed contacted the police. He told detectives that he had seen a man who seemed suspicious. The man was wearing a wool cap and was in the area around the same time investigators believed the attack had happened. Based on that description, a composite sketch was created and released to the public on August 31st.
At a press conference, Chief Boyce says one particular thing stands out.
And if you'll notice the dark wool hat, remember the day was August 2nd. It's a little unusual he's wearing a wool hat in the area there.
And now a laser-sharp focus on this bike path where, unfortunately, there are no cameras. And finding this man, who police say is black, 5'10", between 35 and 45 years old, with a medium build.
We have to speak to this person, so that's the only reason we're putting it out.
After the composite sketch was released, a former NYPD supervisor contacted Robert Boyce. At the time, he was working as the head of security at a residential building in Brooklyn, and he said that one of the residents looked a lot like the man in the sketch. Police went to the apartment. The man, whose name was Kevin, refused to open the door at first. Officers stayed outside the building until he eventually came out. Kevin admitted that, yeah, there was some resemblance to the sketch, so he was taken to the station for questioning. Once there, he refused to provide a DNA sample. Detective Barry Brown later said that decision immediately caught everyone's attention in the room. Police eventually obtained his DNA using a discarded water bottle he had thrown away. But when the results came back, the analysis showed that Kevin's DNA did not match the profile connected to the crime scene. After that lead was ruled out, investigators were basically back at square one, hoping to generate new information. Crime Watch Daily released surveillance footage showing Karina just a few hours before her murder. The video was recorded during what police described as her usual running route. Her family and investigators were both hoping it might reveal some kind of clue. Authorities said it was the last known image of Karina. Karina's loved ones also came together to retrace some of the last routes she was known to have taken. When the DNA still didn't match anyone in the database, Phil urged investigators to use a method called familial searching, basically checking whether any relatives of the possible killer might already be in the database.
You could find the killer, he said. You might be able to trace a direct connection, and that would narrow the search down a lot.
At the time, that kind of testing method was being used in 9 states, but not in New York. So Phil started a petition hoping to change that.
Familial DNA searching goes deeper, using special software to look for a similar, not exact match, indicating the suspect could be related to someone in the system.
There's untold amount of cold cases that'll be solved by this.
But the ACLU is pushing back, saying that such policy could lead to, quote, miscarriages of justice.
Well, I think they're just ignorant of the facts that we are just targeting criminals.
6 months after she was found dead, police now have a person of interest in the case of murdered jogger Karina Vetrano.
One man was taken into custody. The next day, he was officially arrested, and he said,
"Please tell my mom I'm sorry. Could I speak with someone from the victim's family? I'm sorry for what I did."
The events that led to that moment actually began about a month earlier, after weeks and months had passed without any major breakthroughs in the investigation. In January 2017, Lieutenant John Russo took another look at the case. He was one of the officers who had been at the scene when Karina was found, and he also lived in Howard Beach. While reviewing the case files, Russo suddenly remembered an incident from May 2016, just a few months before Karina's murder. And he started to wonder if it might actually be connected to the investigation.
On the other side of the street, near the house next door, I saw someone walking away from me. The person was wearing a tracksuit with long sleeves and a hood pulled over their head, even though it was about 80 degrees outside. And I remember thinking, that's strange.
Russo said the man seemed to be looking over the houses nearby, and that made him call the police. But by the time officers arrived, the person was already gone. The very next day, neighbors reported similar suspicious behavior. They said a man wearing a black and white tracksuit had walked onto several private properties. Later, Russo ran into the same man again and asked for his name. His name was Chanel Lewis. At the time, Russo figured that was probably the end of it and that their paths would never cross again. But in January, the memory came back to him. He had this strong feeling about it, like something just didn't sit right. So he started digging deeper into Chanel Lewis. He discovered that Lewis didn't have a criminal record, but he had received several summonses connected to the Brooklyn side of Spring Creek Park, across from the section of the preserve located in Queens. After that, Chief Boyce received a call from Russo. There was something in Lieutenant Russo's voice that made me think, this might actually be the one, Boyce said, so we jumped on it right away. When investigators began speaking with Chanel Lewis, he told officers he knew the area very well. According to him, he was mostly a loner with very few friends, and he often walked along the trails to listen to music and, clear his head. While cooperating with detectives, he voluntarily provided a DNA sample. Officers also visited his former high school and discovered that his past appeared to be troubled and complicated. According to news reports, while he was still in school, he once told a teacher's aide that he wanted to stab his female classmates.
I want to stab all the girls.
According to reports, he said that on May 17th, 2011, when he was 15 years old, sources also said that at one point he allegedly asked,
"What would happen if I brought a knife to school?"
Sources said the school notified the police and he was taken into custody as a person with emotional disturbances. He was transported to Kings County Hospital Center for evaluation and later released. The following month, according to reports, school staff contacted law enforcement again after he allegedly cursed at a female student and threatened her and her family. He was once again taken to the hospital and later released. One tabloid article also claimed that he had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but that information appears never to have been independently confirmed. During research into the case, that claim only appeared in an article from the New York Post. In September 2011, he was reportedly transferred to a private school for students with emotional and behavioral difficulties. Former classmates later said he was known as a loner and was often bullied at school. They used to beat him all the time, one student said. Even girls would pick on him and hit him. He didn't have any friends. Another former student said that sometimes he tried to fight back, but that didn't happen very often. One classmate who rode the school bus with him said many people made fun of him because of the way he dressed and the way he looked. At the same time, several former students said they never knew him as an aggressive or confrontational person. He always walked around school with his hood pulled over his head, one of them said. The executive director of Martin DePora's schools later said that Chanel Lewis graduated in August 2015, and during his time there were no reports that he had threatened anyone.
While he was at the school, there were no disciplinary records connected to him, and there were no other reports of threatening statements directed at other students, the director said in a statement.
Chanel's father stood up for his son, but at the same time, he pointed investigators to one important detail. He told detectives that his son couldn't have committed the crime because the day after the murder, he had taken him to the hospital. Chanel was treated there for a hand injury. He said he had gotten it during a fight. After checking local hospitals, detectives managed to find the doctor who had treated him. According to Detective Barry Brown, the doctor said he had removed a foreign object from Chanel's hand. The DNA sample taken from Chanel's voluntary swab was then run through the system, and it matched the DNA found at the scene of Karina's murder. That foreign object removed from Chanel's hand was now believed to be a fragment of Karina's broken tooth, which had snapped off when she bit him.
I'm Detective Deal. You're located at the 107 Precinct, second floor, Detective Squad area. Today's date is February 5th, 2017. Time is approximately 10:33 a.m. And I'm activating the tape at this time.
Now that I've advised you of your rights, are you willing to answer questions?
Okay.
Yes? Okay. All right. All right. Chanel, why don't we start with, I think it was a Tuesday evening on August 2nd, 2016. Do you remember that date, that evening?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And where were you at that time?
I was in Gateway and Spring Creek Mall.
Okay, by Gateway and Spring Creek Mall?
Spring Creek Park.
Park?
Yeah.
All right. Were you inside the park?
Yeah.
Okay. And was anyone with you, or were you by yourself?
By myself.
All right. About what time did you get to the park?
About 5 o'clock.
And were you on a trail or you in the grass?
On the trail.
Okay. Now, while you were in the park, did something happen?
Yes.
What happened while you were in the park?
On the park, this girl jogging, and then nothing led to another because some other situation.
All right. Well, the girl that was jogging, was she by herself or with anybody else?
By herself.
And when you first saw her, where were you? Were you in the grass or were you on the trail?
On the trail.
All right. And were you moving or were you standing still?
Like I was moving, listening to music.
You were walking or jogging?
Walking.
Walking? And you were walking towards her?
I was walking towards and then got side to side and then one thing led to another.
You said as she got next to you, when she got next to you as she was running and you were walking, what happened then?
And then, because of a past situation, I got angry and then started hitting her and stuff like that.
Okay. Before you did, where did you hit her?
Like in the face and like in the mouth.
In the face and the mouth. Before you hit her, did you grab her or did you just hit her right away?
Like kind of grabbed her first.
Grabbed her? And like, how did you grab her? What part of her body did you grab?
Like I started hitting her because of the incident that was going on earlier.
Right, but did you grab her before you started hitting her, or was the first thing you did was to hit her? What was the first thing you did?
I grabbed her.
Okay. And how did you grab her?
Like this.
Okay. With both hands?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what part of her body did you grab? Do you remember? Her shoulders, her waist, her neck? Do you remember?
Probably like around here.
Okay, around the shoulders. Did she say anything at all? No. Did she scream?
No, because her tooth broke.
I'm sorry? Her tooth broke? Right. Were you covering her mouth at all? No? Okay. How long would you say you were hitting her for? About how long in time?
The whole thing was like about 5 minutes.
5 minutes, all right. How far off the path would you say you dragged her into the grass? Like how many feet about?
Probably about 10.
Okay. What was the status of her clothing? How was her clothing?
Kind of like pulled off.
Pulled off?
Yeah.
Okay, what was pulled off?
Like her clothes.
Now, you said you did this because you had some anger, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can you tell me about that anger?
You know, I used to live in a different address than I currently live right now.
Right.
And then sometimes there's this man that comes around there. He play like loud music and carry a lot of friends around there. I didn't like it because I feel unsafe and comfortable, and I like my place private and peaceful. And usually I just...
No, I know, Chanel, I know that, like last night, you really didn't want to talk about this, right? Last night. But today, it was okay, you wanted to talk about it, right? I know that you told Detective Brown you wanted to straighten your life out, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then Detective Brown said to wait until you came in the room to talk about it, that's right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you did, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Chanel Lewis, who was 20 years old, was arrested and charged with second-degree murder.
Why'd you do it?
Chanel! We were hiding out for 6 months. Come out. Look this way, look this way, look this way. Look this way. Look this way, right here, sir. Uniform.
After his arrest, Karina's family reached out to the public and asked for opinions on how the remaining money from the GoFundMe fund should be used.
You all made donations, so you all deserve to have a voice, Phil wrote on the fundraising page.
Later, Phil said he distributed nearly $300,000, including making a contribution to Archbishop Malloy High School to create a scholarship in Karina's honor. After that, Chanel Lewis was formally indicted by a grand jury on multiple charges. In total, there were 13 counts related to murder and sexual assault connected to the death of Karina Vetrano. He was facing the possibility of life in prison without parole. Lewis pleaded not guilty.
Tonight, Lewis's relatives say it's not possible.
To the family, I'm sorry for their loss, but they have the wrong person.
Richard Lewis is the suspect's father.
He's a wonderful young man. Wonderful young man.
My brother is a skinny, you saw him on the TV. He's a skinny guy who cannot kill such a strong girl because she's a strong person. He alone can never kill a person like that.
Today, I would like to thank all those who have reached out and give their support for me and my family. I love my son. I support my son. I raised my son to be a God-fearing man and to respect life. My son is friendly, God-fearing, and would not hurt anybody. My son has a mental health problem and needs help. He's not a criminal and need mental resources. Please respect my family privacy. Please respect my family privacy in this matter and allow my son to get help in due process.
Karina's family spent a long time pushing for investigators to start using familial DNA searching in criminal cases. Then, in June 2017, the New York State Commission on Forensic Science agreed to allow that method to be used in investigations involving murder, rape, and certain other serious crimes. The decision was made despite objections from civil rights organizations, which argued that the practice could pull law-abiding people into criminal investigations simply because of their family connections. By the time the commission approved the policy, Chanel Lewis had already been arrested, so the decision didn't change anything for Karina's case, but it could affect future investigations. As mentioned earlier, investigators had also looked into a possible connection between Karina's murder and the killing of Vanessa Marcotte. Later, authorities determined that the two cases were not related. On April 15, 2017, officials announced that Angelo Colin Ortiz, who was 31 years old, had been arrested after DNA evidence linked him to Vanessa's case. He later pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and unarmed robbery, and on November 2, 2022, he was sentenced to life in prison. He will not be eligible for parole until 2067, when he will be 81 years old. November 2018.
Packed inside of the courtroom, filled with family and friends on both sides. As you mentioned, it was also very emotional. Karina Vetrano's mother was inside of that courtroom. She held onto a cross most of the time, crying. Karina Vetrano's accused killer, Chanel Lewis, obviously in the courtroom. His mother was there as well, and she held onto a Bible, also in tears most of the time. Now, opening statements got underway. Defense attorneys with the Legal Aid Society representing Lewis told jurors today Lewis is innocent. They have serious doubts about the evidence, adding there are no witnesses, and Lewis was coerced into confessing, and people are rushing to judgment.
In his opening statement, Assistant District Attorney Brad Leventhal said,
"They crossed paths by chance. She didn't provoke him. He saw her, and he killed her."
Prosecutors said that Chanel didn't have a girlfriend, had very few social connections, and didn't have a job. They described him as someone who often carried a lot of anger. According to their theory, it was that anger that led to the attack, which they described as random.
That day, he took out his anger on a beautiful young woman, a girl wearing a top, the prosecutor said.
However, the defense pushed back against those claims. There won't be any eyewitnesses. No one is going to walk into this courtroom and say, "He did it," said defense attorney Jenny Chung. She also argued that the prosecution was trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Chung questioned the police interrogation of her client as well, which lasted more than 10 hours. Procedures were shortened. The prosecution's evidence is incomplete, she said. The defense also claimed that the DNA evidence linking Chanel Lewis to the crime scene was unreliable. Attorney Robert Mueller argued that the crime scene had been compromised by multiple people, including Karina's father, and therefore could not be considered a fully reliable source of evidence. Lewis's lawyers also said the confession had been obtained improperly and should not have been used in court. According to them, he confessed only because he wanted to leave after waiting for hours. But the prosecution focused heavily on what he actually told police.
He was angry, and he took that anger out on Karina Vetrano. Those are his own words. He is the man who strangled Karina Vetrano, the prosecutor said.
The prosecution also emphasized what they described as strong DNA evidence. An expert witness testified that the DNA profile taken from material found under Karina's fingernails, on her neck, and on her cell phone matched Chanel's DNA profile. 2 NYPD detectives also testified about the detailed and extensive process used to collect evidence in the case. Some of the images shown during testimony were so disturbing that Karina's parents were visibly shaken. At times, they couldn't hold back their tears, and at one point, they even had to leave the courtroom.
Closing arguments on the emotional trial over the death of 30-year-old Karina Vetrano have now wrapped up. The prosecution painting the suspect, 22-year-old Chanel Lewis, as a frustrated, angry, and lonely young man who spotted Vetrano on an after-work jog at a park in Howard Beach and took out all his anger by taking her life.
He was mad, and he took out his anger, and he took out his frustrations on Karina, grabbing her, throwing her to the ground, beating her, and strangling her until she was dead.
But the defense argued that it was the police department that was frustrated with their 6-month-long investigation that had yet to find a suspect, that Lewis was singled out, and that detectives worked endlessly to fit evidence they had to build a case against him.
They never allowed the evidence to develop a theory. Rather, they just wanted the evidence to fit their theory.
The exhausting trial lasted 7 days. Soon, it was time for the jury to decide the fate of the case. After a long day of deliberations, the jurors spent more than an hour reviewing the second of the defendant's 2 recorded confessions. They also asked to have 74 pages of testimony from the prosecution's DNA expert read back to them. On top of that, the jury requested to look again at the autopsy photographs of Karina. After a day and a half of deliberations, 5 jurors said they could not return a guilty verdict beyond a reasonable doubt. That created what's known as a hung jury. The jurors sent a letter to the judge explaining that they could not overcome their disagreements and had already exhausted every option to reach a unanimous decision. After a full day of deliberations, we remain divided. It seems like we can't move forward anymore. We believe we've exhausted all possible options. Because of that deadlock, the judge declared a mistrial.
The parents of Karina Vetrano looking somber and stunned leaving the courtroom. Relatives in tears after the judge declared a mistrial, a ruling which sent shock through the courtroom.
Sir, Mr. Vetrano.
Just a moment. Your comment. Stunned silence from the family of Karina Vetrano moments after learning justice would be delayed.
Vetrano's family did not speak after the ruling. Lewis's legal team, however, did.
The jury is understanding that DNA is not all it. Confession is not all it. And there are issues in the case that, as you all see, it's much more complex.
Is this a win for you?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a conviction, so I guess that's a good thing, but closure would be a good thing too.
That decision meant the case would have to be tried all over again, which made the legal process drag on even longer. For Karina's family and loved ones, it meant continuing a painful ordeal. They would have to relive the details of the tragedy once again and go through another trial in their search for justice. Prosecutors didn't want to take any chances during the second trial, so they prepared new evidence. One of the key pieces was a detailed record of Chanel's internet searches leading up to his arrest. Among those searches were queries about indictments, plea deals, criminal prosecution, and news reports about Karina's murder. Then, in March 2019, the retrial began.
Karina Vetrano's father returned to the stand today in the retrial of the man accused of strangling her back in 2016.
At one point, Vetrano's father dropped to his knees in front of the jurors as he emotionally described finding his daughter's stiff, cold body in a nearby trail.
The defense once again insisted that their client was innocent, arguing that his earlier recorded confession had been obtained under pressure. His attorneys also claimed that if he had truly been the killer, his DNA would have been found all over the crime scene in much larger quantities. But the prosecution remained firm. Prosecutors emphasized that the defendant's DNA matched the evidence, and they also pointed to the recorded confessions in which he admitted that he killed her. Then, just one day before the jury was supposed to begin deliberations in the retrial, the defense attorneys received an anonymous letter. It was supposedly written by an NYPD officer who expressed concerns about the investigation. The letter included several allegations about the early stages of the case. Among other things, it claimed that during the first strategy meetings, NYPD Chief Michael Kemper repeatedly said police were looking for 2 strong white men from Howard Beach. Sunny Hostin, a senior legal correspondent for ABC News, reported that if the letter turned out to be genuine and the concerns described in it were accurate, it could potentially become grounds for an appeal. One of Lewis's attorneys said,
"We received disturbing and credible information suggesting that the police withheld critically important details about other potential suspects. and that information was never shared with the defense.
The defense also said it had become known that police approached Lewis to obtain a DNA sample as part of a large-scale sweep that, according to them, showed racial bias. During that operation, DNA samples were collected from more than 360 African American men in Howard Beach and nearby areas of Brooklyn and Queens.
In light of this new information, we plan to file a motion on Monday requesting a hearing regarding the prosecution's failure to disclose exculpatory evidence, as well as a separate hearing concerning unconstitutional racial profiling during this investigation, the attorney said.
In response, Sergeant Brendan Ryan said that the NYPD had conducted a thorough investigation into the murder. And as the prosecution presented by the Queens District Attorney shows, the evidence clearly demonstrates that Chanel Lewis is responsible for her death. He also noted that numerous court hearings and 2 criminal trials, which took place over more than 2 years, had already carefully examined the issues raised in the anonymous letter. According to him, the letter contained many false claims and inaccuracies. Assistant District Attorney Leventhal also said,
"This anonymous letter contains no verifiable information. The person who wrote it is clearly trying to disrupt the trial."
This morning, the judge denied a request from the defense asking for a hearing on this.
After that, the case was handed over to the jury for deliberation. The importance of that moment was obvious. The first trial had already ended in a deadlock, with the jury unable to reach a verdict and the court declaring a mistrial. Neither side was treating the outcome with too much confidence or complacency. There was a lot at stake, not just for the prosecution and the defense, but also for Karina's family, who had already endured years of uncertainty. On April 1st, 2019, the verdict was finally announced. Inside the courtroom, everyone held their breath.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
Chanel Lewis was found guilty.
A very different response this time around from Vetrano's parents leaving the courtroom.
God, tell us what's going through your mind right now. Mr. Vetrano.
Thank you, Jesus. Keep moving on. Say it again. Thank you, Jesus. Keep moving.
Your thoughts?
Jubilation.
You're not allowed to interview.
Justice.
I am thanking those jurors for listening to the overwhelming evidence.
All the anger, all the years of pain, but mostly the anger was lifted and gone.
Lewis lifted his handcuffed hands in a farewell wave to his family and supporters as he was led off to jail. Some of those supporters today say they followed the case very closely, and a family spokesperson says they question the verdict.
How does a young man walk into Howard Beach, murder a young lady that was physically fit, and walk out of Howard Beach without being seen on any camera from the Gateway Mall, any camera in Howard Beach at all?
After the guilty verdict was finally delivered, the case once again slipped into a state of uncertainty.
Now to a stunning development in the Karina Vetrano murder case. Sentencing for her convicted killer has been postponed because of new claims of juror misconduct.
For Karina's family, it was another painful blow and a reminder that even a guilty verdict doesn't always bring an immediate or final sense of closure. It was claimed that one of the jurors accused 3 others of ignoring the judge's instructions about when and how the case was allowed to be discussed. The judge agreed to delay sentencing in order to hold a hearing with the jurors. Queens District Attorney Richard A. Brown later responded to the defense's accusations, presenting a different version of what had happened inside the jury room. In a sworn written statement referenced in the motion, Juror A claimed that Juror B had started expressing conclusions about the case from the very beginning of the trial and continued doing so throughout the proceedings. According to the statement, Juror B told Juror A,
"Well, I've already made up my mind, and I hope you have too."
After the victim's parents testified on the second day of the trial, District Attorney Brown wrote that those comments from Juror B, identified in the motion as the 4th juror, did not show prior bias. Instead, he said, they reflected an emotional reaction to the shocking testimony about the condition of the victim's body. During deliberations, jurors are required to rely only on the evidence presented in court. However, According to a sworn statement, some jurors began bringing up information that had never been introduced as evidence, and some of that information may not have been accurate. Juror D told the others that the absence of the defendant's DNA in samples from the victim's intimate area could be explained by the idea that the body might have absorbed the male DNA. She allegedly told Juror A, "I know this better than you, you're just a man. I was raped." The motion argued that by saying this, the juror had improperly supplemented the evidence presented in court with her own personal experience. Because of that, other jurors may have felt they couldn't question her statement and were forced to accept it as fact. That kind of communication was described as juror misconduct, since she had essentially become an unsworn expert supporting the prosecution. In other words, the jury had stepped beyond the evidence that was officially presented in court. Attorneys from the Legal Aid Society representing Chanel Lewis, Robert Moeller, Julia L. Burke, and Jenny Chung submitted these arguments to the court. However, Juror D denied ever telling the other jurors that she had been a victim of rape. In a sworn statement submitted along with the prosecution's response, she wrote, "I have never been raped, and I have never told anyone that I was raped. As far as I know, during the deliberations, no other juror said that she had been raped either." In another example mentioned in the motion, defense attorneys said that one of the jurors had drawn conclusions based on information that was never part of the evidence presented in court. Juror C compared injuries from a completely unrelated rape case with the injuries suffered by Karina Vetrano and claimed that sexual assault had been proven because the injuries in both cases were the same. The motion argued that the information Juror C shared with the other jurors was improper because it essentially introduced facts that had never been presented during the trial and went beyond a juror's ordinary life experience, knowledge, or common sense. Juror C admitted that he had mentioned his experience serving on a jury in a previous rape case. However, he said another juror immediately told him not to do that, and after that he stopped discussing any details from his earlier jury service. According to a sworn statement from one of the jurors, the district attorney defended the jury's actions. It was stated that none of the jurors presented themselves as professional experts. Instead, each person simply relied on their own life experience and expressed their personal opinion as an ordinary citizen.
That wasn't misconduct?
After the verdict, CBS 2 spoke to the jury foreman who called it a slam dunk case. When asked what the most damning evidence was,
two things. The confession, it wasn't coerced. Dina was like so overwhelming.
He said the jury was unanimous on the murder charges, but there were at least 2 holdouts on the sex abuse charges.
However, in another interview after the verdict, one of the jurors who agreed to speak with reporters anonymously said he had felt pressure from other jurors to vote for a guilty verdict. In the end, the judge rejected the claims of juror misconduct. After that decision, the sentencing could finally move forward. April 23rd, 2019.
With respect to murder in the first degree, the sentence of this court is that you spend the rest of your natural life in jail without any possibility of parole.
It's the moment the family of Karina Vetrano has been waiting more than 2.5 years for, giving passionate testimonies in the courtroom ahead of sentencing for Chanel Lewis, the man who will now serve life in prison for her death.
There were no more Merry Christmases, no more Happy New Years, no more happy birthdays. There is no more pleasure in life, no more smiles, no more happiness. Those are all taken by that convicted, murdering rapist. Only my faith in God and my belief in heaven keeps me from killing myself for fear of not being allowed into heaven to see my baby again.
Describing his family walking the earth as zombies just waiting to see Karina, Phil Vetrano told 22-year-old Chanel Lewis his daughter had a message for him.
She told me that if you stand up here today in court and ask for her forgiveness, tell her you're sorry, she will forgive you. But remember, those are not my words, and I will never forgive you.
Her mother brought a piece of Karina into the courtroom.
These are Karina's shoes. These are the shoes that she put on the morning of August 2nd as she prepared to work and wore throughout the workday. as tiny as they are, Your Honor. These are the shoes of a giant, a valiant warrior, and a queen.
At times, you could see Lewis over her shoulder.
The vacant expression you show is merely a reflection of your detached and empty soul. You suffered and died 1,000,000 deaths every second of every day. You breathed, you ate, you searched your phone for pornography and forcible rape. But God was watching you all the time, Chanel Lewis.
The judge added 32 years in prison to the life sentence for second-degree murder and sexual assault.
This is a situation where both families have lost, he said. The worst nightmare any parent could imagine: your child goes out for a run and never comes back. One day, you'll see that the people who followed this case will move on with their lives, and you'll be left alone. But I'll tell you this, when that day comes, you'll be behind bars.
The defense spoke on behalf of Lewis, and then he said just a few words.
I'm innocent. I'm sorry for the family's loss, but I didn't do this.
Assistant District Attorney John Ryan said that the defendant in this case had not shown a single drop of remorse for this brutal crime.
I hope this sentence brings the family at least some comfort, knowing that the person who killed their loved one will never see freedom again.
After the sentencing, his mother and several supporters gathered outside the courthouse to protest. As the lead prosecutor walked toward his car, people shouted in his direction. "Shame on you. You're racist."
Minutes later, the lead prosecutor emerged in front of the protesters rather than taking an alternate route. And in further protest, they shut down Queens Boulevard for about 2 minutes.
No justice! No justice!
You saw 2 people arrested there. Some of the groups that they're involved with said they'll take their protests to Howard Beach in the upcoming days and weeks. Meanwhile, Chanel Lewis's legal team is already working on his appeal.
Those who believe in his innocence argued that the NYPD was under intense pressure to quickly find a suspect and close the case, and that investigators focused on him because of that pressure. Around 40,000 people signed a petition calling for the case to be reviewed by the Conviction Integrity Unit. Despite the calls for his release and the ongoing public debate, the legal outcome did not change. After 2 trials, 1 mistrial, and years of reviews and disputes, the jury found him guilty, and the court issued its final sentence. For the justice system, that verdict marked the formal end of the legal process. In a case filled with complexity and controversy, the conviction brought a legal conclusion, even if it didn't bring emotional closure to a story that had consumed a family, a community, and public attention for years. Karina Vetrano's family says they want her to be remembered for more than just the circumstances of her death. Through scholarships, memorial initiatives, and community efforts, they are trying to keep her name and her story alive in the community she loved.
Something so tragic and despicable. We have something good coming out of this. We have a scholarship.
Amid all the legal battles, appeals, and public debates, one person often faded into the background: Karina Vetrano. Her life, not the legal fight that unfolded after her death, remained the true center of this story. And in the end, that's where this story returns. Karina Vetrano was a daughter, a friend, a young woman building her future, someone who worked with children and filled her days with routine, purpose, and plans. On an ordinary summer evening, she stepped out of her home to do something she had done countless times before. She went for a run. And she never came back. That simple, devastating reality became the heart of this case. How an ordinary moment can suddenly become irreversible. And how the loss of one life can leave a silence that a family, a community, and everyone who followed her story can feel for years.
A memorial as beautiful as Karina Vetrano, tucked away in Spring Creek Park, where a butterfly made of stones, an angel, and candles sit. But perhaps the most important fixture of all, her father, who returns here every morning to remember his daughter.
It's the only place I could go to get peace. And it might seem strange because right where I'm sitting is where I found her. But I think because it's the only place where I have any control.
If she could be here today, or you could speak to her today, what would you say to her?
I speak to her every day. Every single day I speak to her, and she speaks to us in volumes.
Karina's father says her voice will always be heard, from the sound of the birds here to the writings on her blog, and they plan to find a way to get her work put into a book.
How do you think Karina would want to be remembered?
Just as she is. Just as everybody sees her. She's special, she was smart, she was beautiful, and she was destined for greater things. And she has achieved that. We don't know what the rest of our life is going to be like. But it's a good feeling to know that now we could move forward.